present
come in and sit down.
and no longer has a voice who will
They are
pursue
saying Diddy is
justice
about
for
to
her
go broke.
accusation.
Now, let's talk about
As
it,
of the
y'all.
taken
Diddy
against
thought
Diddy,
he dodged the big
no
one.
expansion
No
of the
sex trafficking
investigation,
conviction,
no
no
isolation
RICO convent
orders,
conviction,
no equipment
just about
access,
2 men at
no
conventions,
suspension
and
of
this man
attorney
thought he was just
communication.
going tiptoe out the door
Everything
with some
inside
bail.
solitary
Now,
block
listen,
C continued
Judge
as
Aaron
before.
told him to sit
Everything
down before
except
he
the
sits them
fear.
down. But y'all,
If a
let's actually
female
talk
warden
about how
can
Diddy
vanish
forgot
after a
one
single
thing,
nothing
the civil
except the
cases.
fear.
And now
If a
Jane
female
Doe,
warden can
the
vanish
escorts,
after a single
and
note,
every
the
person
ones who
who's ever
once
got
worked
flown out
overnight
under
in that
pressure
area,
just got a legal
the ones
cheat
who
code.
filed for
And they're
leave
coming
without giving a
straight for his
reason,
money, y'all.
the ones
Let's
who
get
saw
into this,
but never
'cause all I
spoke.
gotta say is, baby,
No one
we
mentions
love
the
to see
note,
it.
but
Now,
everyone
first of all,
knows it
I want
appeared.
everybody on the
And if
under
what
on the
it says
internet
is
to
true,
understand what Diddy was
punishment.
actually convicted of
Part
and
3,
why it's a civil lawsuit.
the person no
Gold ring.
longer in
All
the
right,
system.
so
The
let's get
internal
into it
personnel
because this
database
part
of the
matters more
Atlanta
than
Federal
people.
Detention
And
Center
the Diddy
updated
supporters
its weekly
realized
roster.
a lot
Under
of
the
fit folks
category
heard
Special
Mann
Personnel
Act
Code
and thought it was
Adjustment,
some dusty
the name
technical
of
law.
Warden
Now, I'm
TD
not
was
gonna
marked
lie,
as
it is
removed
dope.
from
It is
system
rooted
by
in
administrative
racism,
order.
white slavery,
There was no
however,
decision number
over the
recorded,
years,
but was
over the years,
deactivated.
it
Her
evolved and
personal
is one now
contact
the most
information
powerful
disappeared
tools
from
that
the internal
prosecutors
network
use in
exactly
sex
36
trafficking.
hours
All right, y'all got
after
that.
she filed
now,
her complaint.
Let's get into this.
The change
All right.
log was
So
executed
the Mann
from the
Act
system's
now
highest
is a
access
federal
level
max
server,
crime
a
statute.
device bearing
And
the
baby, it
identifier
has teeth. It carries prison time up to 20
located
years.
in the
And if you
coordination
plead
office on the
guilty or you're
4th floor of the
convicted,
Security
that stays on your
Administration
record
Wing.
for life. Now, baby,
Only 2
Diddy was
individuals
convicted.
possess the
So
authority
what
to
exactly was
perform a
Diddy
system-level
convicted of? Under
personnel
U.S.
removal
Code
at that tier,
2421,
the head
the
of
Mann
Federal
Act
Human
makes
Resources
it a federal
and
felony to
Detention
knowingly
Center.
transport a person
No
across
confirmation
state lines
exists
for the
as
purposes of
was
illegal
made.
spatial activity.
The removal of
whether
Warden
that's
TD's
prostitutes
name was
or
not
coercive
accompanied by any
spatial
or
arrangements
protective
that violate
reassignment.
state or federal law.
At
Now, let's break
11:20
this down
a.m.,
legally,
a printed
because I
copy of
need
the
for people
personnel
in the back to
deployment
hear
chart
this.
was
Knowingly
generated
means
in
it
preparation
wasn't
for the new week's
accidental.
schedule.
You booked the flights,
Under the
you
section
arranged
marked
the hotel,
Internal
you
Alert,
knew what was gonna
TD's
happen.
name.
For illegal spatial activity includes SMECs under coercion, fraud, drugs, manipulation, or exploitation, not just formal prostitution. And crossing state lines turns it into a federal offense, not just a local scandal. And that's exactly what federal prosecutors alleged that he did multiple times over multiple years to multiple women and the escorts. So even if the charges were sealed, okay, and even if he didn't serve time, which they are not sealed, and he is going to serve time. A conviction or guilty plea under the Mann Act means the federal government proved beyond a reasonable doubt that he uses power, wealth, and transportation access to commit sex crimes. Maybe let that sit in. No, literally, let it. Okay, now let's see. Now, here's why the conviction is a civil lawsuit jackpot. It removes the burden of proof for future plaintiffs. That's right. Jane Doe and the escorts don't need to prove that Diddy intended to exploit them across state lines. All they have to do is show up and say, Yana, here's his federal conviction. He's already been found guilty of doing this exact thing. They don't need him to be convicted of sex trafficking. They only need to show by a preponderance of the evidence that it's more likely than not that he harmed them. A Mann Act conviction is like a neon sign for the judge saying this man has done this before. This isn't theoretical. The Mann Act makes him legally vulnerable even without jail time. Because let's be clear, Diddy may be able to avoid a lengthy prison sentence, but legally, he's now a convicted SMX offender under federal law. That's admissible. That's powerful. And in a civil court, baby, that's money. The survivors don't need to prove consent was absent. They don't need to prove, oh, I didn't consent. I didn't want it. They don't have to sit up in front of those juries and listen to them watch all their horrors and being like, nah, you wanted. The law has already said it didn't matter because under the Mann Act, consent isn't valid if the sexual activity involved fraud, manipulation, or abuse of power. So when people say, well, they agreed to go, the court has already decided. The agreement was not legally valid. You cannot legally agree to let somebody exploit you like that. Now, here's the translation for the timeline and the people in the back. Diddy just didn't take a PR hit, y'all. He was legally branded as someone who exploits women using power, travel, and coercion. Even if he never wears an orange jumpsuit, and he will. Even the best estimate, Mark Aragos has him as a year. His money is now on the table, and the bill is coming due. But y'all, let's also focus on the civil fallout. Okay, how this one, well, actually, these two convictions opened the lawsuit floodgates. Diddy's Mann convention didn't close that chapter. It cracked the safe open. Because now, well, actually, yeah, now that Diddy's been formally convicted of a federal sex crime, what's that mean? Take a guess. Every person who has ever been flown out, locked down, coerced, rugged, assaulted, manipulated, or just controlled by the this man in a spectral context. Baby, they have legal ammo. Who are we talking about? Jane Doe, the escorts, any background dancers, industry girlfriends, paid for plus ones. I'm just saying. And did he pay for their time, not their body? And the ones who were told this is how it works. Get used to it. And anyone who had to play alone to survive, now, thanks to collateral, estoppel. A legal term, Diddy can't just show up in court and say, I didn't do that. Because the federal government already said yes. Yes, you did in fact. Do that. The Mann Act conviction means every survivor's legal team gets to skip step 1. They don't have to prove if he's guilty. They get to focus on how much he owes. And baby, of course this is about money, not prison. But again, don't let people screw you with the okie, okay? Don't let people screw you with the okie. Okay, Avono, why are you doing civil? You just want money? Hell yeah. Run that fool's pockets up. Because without that money, these people wouldn't be on their hands and knees begging for pennies, doing his evil work. All right? This is about money, not prison. The criminal court gave us the label. The civil court is going to send the invoice. Under the Trafficking Victims Protection Act and the related civil statutes, these survivors can now sue for pain and suffering, psychological trauma, emotional distress, loss of income, punitive damage, attorney's fees, and lifetime therapy costs. And those numbers add up fast. If one woman wins a $5 million judgment, that sets a precedence for the next and the next and the next. And this is how predators lose everything after the verdict. Diddy is now one mistake away from losing it all, forever. And baby, we love to see it. And here, because you guys, I don't care. Listen, this is a point of discourse, but even a fool can see that right now. And by fools, I mean everybody but his supporters outside, can see that now that there's a federal conviction on record, Diddy can never afford another mistake. If another Jane comes forward tomorrow, if he loses his temper in a hotel suite, if a party gets filmed, if a former assistant comes clean, or if an escort feels emboldened, baby Diddy is done. Because that one new lawsuit, that lawyer just walks in with the Mann Act paperwork and says, look at the pattern. He did this before. He's doing it again. The judge doesn't need a full trial. The judge doesn't need to guess. They already know who he is. And this time he can't claim innocence. He already signed that away. Baby, this is the final word on this fallout. Day 5 of the Diddy trial. Diddy trial verdict, fallout, I guess. Did he thought that literally only being convicted of those 2 counts could save his empire? But what he really did was hand every survivor the legal weapon they were missing. He thought it was over. But the truth is that signature under the Mann Act just made it open season for his life. Again, I want you guys to know he plead guilty on 2 counts. And it's not even what he plead guilty for, it's what he admitted on the record. Mark Agnapilio admitted he was very violent, admitted he did all those horrible things. That's why he got denied bail. Everything he admitted in that court can be used in a civil suit. Baby, again, the Mann Act blew the door open. And get this, the feds might not be done. The Mann Act wasn't just a slap on the wrist, it was a wedge, a crack in the dam, and now the water is rushing in civilly, and perhaps even criminally. Let's be clear. When the federal court convicts you under the Mann Act, you don't just lose reputation, you lose protection. How? Well, how about this? First, the civil floodgates are wide open. Every woman who thought, well, I can't sue, no one would believe me, now has something powerful in their corner. A federal conviction confirming this
and
man
no longer
used
has a voice who will pursue justice for her accusation.
To exploit women. This is
As
the
of
legal
the
equivalent of
Diddy,
blood in the water.
no expansion
and
of the investigation, no isolation orders,
and trauma
no
timelines,
equipment access,
and the Trafficking
no
Victims
suspension of
Protecting
attorney
Act.
communication.
That's a TVP, which
Everything
works hand
inside
in hand
solitary
with the Mann
block
Act,
C
gives
continued as
survivors
before.
up to 10 years
Everything
from the date
except
of
the
discovery
fear.
to file
If a
civil
female
claims
warden can
for
vanish
coerced,
after a single
drug-fueled
note, thing except the
manipulation,
fear.
emotional
If a
and
female warden
psychological
can
abuse,
vanish after a
commercial
single note,
exploitation,
ones who
and
once
anything
worked
tied to a
overnight in that
pattern of
area.
grooming and
The ones who
trafficking.
filed
And the
for
best
leave
part
without
is,
giving a
they don't
reason.
need a new
The ones who
conviction.
saw
They
but
just
never
need to
spoke.
say, this
No one
happened to
mentions
me
the
too,
note.
and it matches
But everyone
what he's
knows
already
it
been
appeared.
convicted of.
And
This
if
is
what it
copy
says
and
is
paste
true,
civil
then
court
punishment.
goal. But here's
Part
the
3.
cold truth.
The
He's
person
not
no
safe
longer in the
criminally
system.
either.
The
And this
internal
is the one
personnel
thing
database
these
of the
Diddy
Atlanta
supporters
Federal
don't want
Detention
to
Center
admit. Diddy
updated its
thinks
weekly
this man
roster.
at
Under the
convention
category
conviction
Special Personnel
was the
Code
end of it.
Adjustment,
A sealed
the name
deal,
of Warden
a quiet
TD was
close.
marked as
But that's
removed
not
from
how
system
feds
by
play the long
administrative
game.
order.
Let's look at the
There
R.
was no
Kelly
decision
blueprint.
number
First
recorded.
case,
It was
acquitted.
deactivated.
Second,
Her
missed.
personal
Third,
contact
media
information
circus.
disappeared from
No
the
charges.
internal network
Fourth
exactly
swing,
36
boom,
hours
federal
after she
trafficking
filed her
conviction.
complaint.
Decades behind
The
bars.
changelog
The
was
DOJ
executed
took
from the
4
system's
tries to
highest
build a
access
perfect
level
criminal
server,
case.
a
And when
device
they
bearing
hit,
the identifier
they hit hard. Same with
DCCA1,
Epstein,
located
same
in the
with
coordination
Weinstein.
office on the
Pattern
4th
cases
floor of
take
the
time.
Security
And now the
Administration
Mann Act
wing.
conviction. The two of
Only
them
2
has done
individuals
2
possess the
dangerous
authority
things
to
for Diddy.
perform a
It
system-level
preserved criminal
personnel removal
liability,
at that
because
tier,
if any
the
new
head
victim
of Federal
steps
Human
forward with a fresh
Resources
federal
and
violation,
Detention Center.
or if any past violations
No confirmation
falls within the
exists
statute of
application was made.
limitations, the feds
The removal
can
of
reopen
Warden
an
TD's name was not
investigation with
accompanied
and
by
file new
any
charges.
or
And this
protective
time,
reassignment.
They bring the
At
pattern,
11:20
and they might
a.m.,
still
a
get the
printed
RICO.
copy of
Now
the
I know what
personnel
you're saying.
deployment chart
Double
was
jeopardy.
generated
They
in
can
preparation
never
for
try
the new
him for
week's
RICO
schedule.
again. Yes, for
Under
the
the section
trafficking of
marked
Cassie and
Internal
Jane,
Alert,
but for
TD's
anybody
name
else, still open season. So again, like I said, let's just say, did he lose his temper again, like he allegedly did with Jane? Let's say the former employee hands over those rumored videos. Let's say someone flips a driver, a manager, a fixer. If one more credible case lands on a prosecutor's desk, Diddy is not just writing checks, he's doing time. Diddy is in a holding pattern, y'all. One step from collapse. Now, right now, again, this is dangerous legal limbo. The feds have enough to expose him. The civil suits are lining up to bankrupt him. One more misstep, and he is R. Kelly. He doesn't even have to assault anyone new. If a case from 2016-17 surfaces and falls within the 10-year window, he could be charged under the same law he just literally got convicted of. But this time, it's gonna be worse. And because he's already a convicted SMEX offender, the next jury won't be asking if. They'll be asking how many years. Baby Diddy tried to close the door with a sealed deal, but what he really did was leave it unlocked and light a fire on the way out. Civilly, he's vulnerable. Criminally, he's on probation without papers. Financially, the invoices are coming. Baby, one misstep, one more Jane, one more temper tantrum. And the government that let him slide this, I'm sorry, not the government, the jury that let him slide this time, baby, they will swing again. And next time, they're saying they might not miss. Woo! Baby, this is some heavy stuff. What do y'all think about this? Because at the end of the day, Jane's case is just a start. Jane Doe may potentially file suit again. If she did, it would outline rugging, rape, psychological control, and exploitation across multiple states, the exact blueprint for the Mann Act charges. And because Diddy has already pled guilty to similar behavior, her legal team has momentum. But what happens when the escorts file? What happens when a second Jane Doe, if they exist, steps forward, or a third, or a fourth, or a